We got about 15 minutes to go, so that's why we're...
We are now recording, so feel free as you go. I'm literally recording from the tablet in my hand. The mic will be able to pick up your questions, but as you start asking anything, I will come closer to you to use this as our microphone as we go. It will be sharing this page for us, and we're set. Number one, I like to say as I talk about eCampus and I talk about any specific course, this is our course, is our training course, but each of your courses is built on two foundational items. The gradebook and materials. The gradebook is the skeleton of the course. If you have the gradebook in play, everything thereafter will fall online within the categories you set up. And then the materials being the flesh that you're putting on that skeleton. I've kept that thought, place, and process because I like to say that if you take 5 minutes to set up your gradebook once in the beginning of the semester, you shouldn't have to touch it anymore. Edits, changes, if you negotiate with your students mid-semester a change, sure, that's going to happen. But as you look at it big picture, the gradebook setup area itself even shouldn't be something that you have to come back to throughout your semester. You should be able to get it done once and done according to your grading categories and things like that, and be able to move on from there. The materials, though, and for our very new people's sake, materials are any of these items that you'll see and you can add on the home page of a course. And the materials available to you are here in this drop-down list. So there are going to be some things today that we might be a couple steps ahead of you yet if you're very, very new. But we'll make sure that you have the resources after the fact to fill in those gaps if there's bigger picture questions. Trying to focus on some of the things we need to really watch for with the courses starting next week. So to the point of gradebook materials, you need to have them working together. Once the gradebook's in play, you're good to go. Creating materials and set them up once, no problem. If you build them out throughout the rest of the year, everything will be in play as you make them to put it in a grading category, give it a due date, select a scale. All those things will be ready for you if you start with the gradebook. I'm going to head there myself. You guys are in this course as students, so you can't see that aspect of it. But left-hand side, gradebook. And even a first training note is you can't get to the gradebook setup where you need to be until you enter the gradebook. Notice here this grade setup option shows beneath the word gradebook after I've entered it. So if you, after the fact, go looking for grade setup and you say, Will showed me grade setup, how do I get there? It's not one of the options. Click on gradebook, click on grade setup. This is where I say, besides building rubrics and scales, which you'll see on the right-hand side there, the majority of this you can spend 5 minutes on and you're good to go. If you have rubrics, you want to build very interesting rubrics or detailed rubrics, that can take time. If you already have them built in Word documents, at the very least, you just have to do a lot of copy and paste. Not too bad, but that's your most expensive time. Here, what we want to look at first and foremost is setting up our grading categories. And so in most cases, we're familiar with these as you've written syllabi or you've received a syllabus. You see, reading reports being a category for you, and it's worth, oh, nice caps lock, a certain amount of content. So I just add that category, and now as I build any of my reading reports in the materials, they fit into that slot. It's going to organize it for me. Primarily, they actually designed the system to use categories as an organization feature. It's when you want to use them for weighting and for grading that you need to come up to this top area. To the left of categories itself, I don't have an annotation tool on this, and I don't have an annotation tool on this either. But here we have the weight categories checkbox just above here. Selecting that will bring up the weights. And I only have one category, so it's showing 100%. But as I build out more categories, I can begin doing that weighting according to what's already in your syllabi. I mean, looking over someone's shoulder here, and I see those categories are there on that page. So you just need to do one for one what's in your syllabus in these categories themselves. Once I select the weight categories checkbox seen here, need to be able to save my changes. This is a good note to have, good teaching tool to have across the board for eCampus. If it has a Save Changes button, you must use it. The gradebook, I think, really is the only place that auto-saves, but there may be one or two other places that auto-save. If you see the Save Changes, make sure to hit it. So my weighting stuck, my reports are there. I'm going to add another category for example just to see. Of course, now I don't have any capitalization. Here we go. And I can build out that weight again. So I'm going to go, for our sake of demonstration, 50. Yours are probably something like 10, 10, 30, and 20, or 25, 25, 25, and 25, or whatever your math works out to. But for example's sake, here's our 50. Notice as well, as soon as I type in that weight, the percentage that it's calculating by matches. If you get into fun weighting, and if you're the mathematician, you can get extravagant with your weights, and you can have them be all sorts of different levels of points and go that distance. It will still calculate it back to you, and the gradebook still functions on percentages. So I find that it's just simpler, do what it's doing, and keep in track with it.
Can you talk about, when you don't need to add grading category, the difference between total points and then percentage?
Yes, next thing on my list. Total points and percentage being the question just raised. When you see me adding one of these categories, it has a drop down. That's an example here. I use the add button, or if I click on any of their names, if I click on quiz, or if I click on reading reports, it'll let me edit the category after the fact. There's a drop down here with a difference between total points and percent. Practically, something in a category weighted by total points takes, the math is that it takes all the points in that total category. Say it's 500 points of items, they add up to 500 points. Whatever the student accrues, their actual is 480 points, 450 points out of a 500. It does a straight division. It says, okay, 400 possible. The student got 480, divide 480 by 500, and that's the weight it's giving out of 50% of the grade. Does that make sense? It's taking any and all those points and just adding them all up at one shot and doing one division.
So I have an assignment that's set up, say there's a rubric and there's 120 points on the rubric. But I would then be able to go and say the student gets 100. If I put it in the weight category, I would put in 100, I would grade it as 100, and then it would calculate it based on how much that assignment is
worth relative to the other points in the category. Yes.
Okay.
If you want to do relative weighting, where I've got a draft worth 50 points, this is very helpful in writing context, maybe an outline worth 25 points, a draft worth 50 points, and final draft worth 100 points, and that is weighted. Points is the way to do it within its own category. The flip side is percents. What it does with percents is it makes everything equally weighted. In the sense that it doesn't matter how many points are in there, it doesn't matter. You could have an individual assignment worth 500 points. It is going to take that assignment, take the student's actual grade, and divide it. It's going to give you the average on that item. So they get a 480 out of 500. It's going to grab the percent of that. And if there are other ones in there, it's going to be a 10 out of 15. It's going to divide that. It's going to take all those averages and then average them against each other. Talking through the math isn't always as helpful, because if you're more visual, you want to see it. If you can conceptualize, it works for you. What we've done to make sure that you're supported from the information being presented today is given resources for this. So in Supplemental Site Basics, this is my portion of this time, this folder here, under Gradebook, there is actually an article in here, grading categories, total points versus percentage. I'm going to click it, hope that it opens up for me. Open up to another screen, no problem. Here, Schoology outlines, in short layman's terms, what I just went over. Student scores 6 out of 6 and also a 60 out of 100. It takes the 66 out of 106. That's their percentage grade for that category. Student scores 6 out of 6, so receives 100. 60 out of 100, so receives a 60. The student gets an 80. That's a significant percentage difference between the two methods. What the points allows you to do is have the relative weighting, while percentage keeps it all at a kind of a flat level.
Another way I like to think of it as well is that using weighted categories, everything that falls within the category of paper is equal. Whereas if I have a larger project and I want to break it up into components, I want your lit review, and I want whatever it is. So those components, if you want those to be worth different things, but still live in the same category, I would use points. That to say, weighted categories is definitely easier. You don't have to do math. And to be honest, when I break up projects into small components, I still use weighted. I just break them out into different categories. So like the smaller components of the paper may have their own smaller, so I just tend to stick in weighted percentages because it's easier. You don't have to do the math.
So, and what that practically looks like is if you have the outline, and then the rough draft, and then the final draft, here on the categories page, instead of putting all three of those in a category with 25%, you would put them in a category 5% outline. You put them in a category 10% first, or 5% rough draft, and then another category for the remaining sum there. So that's a way to work your calculations that you don't have to get fancy with the math, and it will just do it for you. But you're just building more categories overall. Yes. And so in context with maybe more K-12 environments, there's actually a feature in here that lets you set items as you create them as a midterm or as a final grade, and it gives it its own column and it separates. We don't operate in the same realm as K-12. Not everybody gives a midterm. Not everybody gives a final. Some people give both. So we like to say if you're going to do exams, build that into one of these categories. You will see a place while creating assignments and discussions to set a checkbox for midterm or final. We don't recommend using it because it sets it up differently in the grade book. It actually sets it aside and tries to parse out the grade more than it should. Then there's just an area where Schoology is still kind of catching up with higher ed as an environment. It was birthed in that context in K-12. Quick tips. So that's a big point. That's a big and important feature is just having your categories in place, and those need to match what your grade book is. If your grade book currently says research paper 30%, that's okay. If you're going to break it out, you can just break it out here and set your 30% how you want to. You don't have to necessarily reflect that on the, you don't have to feel like, oh, am I not representing this correctly to my students? Your assignment instructions will build that out for them, that what's worth is what. As long as the math is here correctly, you can trust that by the end of the semester, the A, B, or C they get is accurate. That's the benefit of running these grading categories and using it effectively. Otherwise, not much that you need to set here. There's a lot of options you can read up on, and a good note for those that are new, anywhere that you see these question bubbles, right? It just is a little question mark. If you click over it or hover over it, it gives you a little extra information. So there's nothing too much to worry about there. What I will highlight are quick tips for designing. So step one, grading categories. Set them in play. Choose your math. We typically just encourage going percentage. Step two, start using some defaults. Please, no.
Now we're extra credit in the grade book. What I did last semester was set up a grade book, but then had no category for extra credit, which was demanded.
Right. By the students and by the experience.
And another one was a makeup test.
Just like Kurt, you're a step ahead of me. That is on my list.
Okay,
We'll get to it, but it's a felt need. We see it in two ways here fairly frequently. Either by the end of the semester, you can get the chance to get 5 extra points, or you don't attend enough classes and you start losing points. We see both sides of it, depending on the instructor, of using extra credit. So we'll set that up in just a second. To make your designing process easier. So I said, here's the skeleton. We've just set it in play. There's some features here that you can set some defaults or favorites that'll make the rest of your creation a bit easier. Notice the stars. So here I have in the grading categories, I have 2 gray stars. Over here on the scales side, I have a bunch of stars and one is lit up. These stars set defaults for creation. And so if you know you're going to be making 20 reading reports and maybe 3 quizzes, select the reading reports as your favorite, because whenever you go to create an assignment, you'll see it in just a second, it defaults to picking that category. So it's one less click. Otherwise, every time you make an assignment, you have to click categories, select the one you want, and then hit create. If you set the one you know you're going to make the most of at the front, it saves you a click. Of course, when I get to making those 3 quizzes, I will have to then click on the drop down and select quiz, quiz, quiz. That's a lot easier than having to do that 23 times when I can just do it 3. Setting that star is helpful. On the right-hand side, some of you will know more about this than others. Kurt, for instance, counseling and social work, both individually, have standard scales you can see here. So as you teach a course in social work, or as you teach a course in counseling, maybe not relevant to everyone, but at least for the sake of our recording can be helpful, you can select one of those standard scales as your primary. As you teach something in AUD, you can select that standard scale for you. WPA has a standard scale, so that's relevant here for Tim, who's in attendance.
It's so perfect because notoriously that's below where the scale appears.
To W.
And that's a step you.
Oh,
Yep. So now if you come in before you start your course, select that default, and it will save you that step. And frankly, I create things too in this system. You're not alone as instructors creating things. I create things too. I forget to set the scale. So this helps to make sure that your scale is always on there. You're noticing a bunch here with locks. Those are system-wide scales that we've added. My office has added. And at the request of the program or department you see. You can add your own scale if you're not operating within a department standard using the add button here in the top right. It'll let you type in your scale that's in each of your syllabi so that you can make sure that it's accurate. Previewing that briefly, of course, it lets you select your letter grades and type them in. I had a question about this recently where someone said, oh, it's missing numbers. Your scale doesn't calculate to 100. What are you talking about? When you build this, forgive the keyboard there, guys. I might say that my A plus, forgive me. My A plus is 98 to 100. So I put the bottom of the range. I put 98 and it assumes 100. When I go to do my A now, say that's a 94 to a 97. Again, I only put my 94 because the next one up is 98. Anything between 9 as an A. Relations out. When I build these scales and I'm sitting there, I've got a piece of paper on one on my desk, and I've got a syllabus on one screen, I've got this on the other screen. I just sit there and I read the bottom number, 98, 94, 80, whatever it is, and go down, and then it assumes the range itself.
So if I get a 98, am I getting an A or an A plus?
You're getting an A plus.
Even though the end is A, under A, the higher is 98? The higher grade is 98 and under A?
Anything 98 and above is an A plus. Anything 94 to 97 is an A. You're saying that in the middle here?
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. The 98 won't convert. It won't take over.
Our scale is 90 to 89. Like that's how
Here we go. Is that your scale? That's the social work standard scale. Forgive me, let me zoom in here a bit. I'll stick to the top. Probably not. I've worked with Jessica, and she hasn't said yet. This is saying that 94 to 100 is an A. 90 to 93 is an A minus. That's the setup we were just looking at.
Yeah, I'm following you, but on the width.
That one itself was giving the percentage weird. Let's see if I can edit it.
98 twice, that's what.
And that is set correctly though. I know it displays 98 twice, but that's set to the math works out. It does work out.
Yeah. Whether that was a glitch or it's just how we're perceiving it, and it's referencing the percentages and its average between the next thing over when you're looking at a scale there. right-hand side is it's also giving a letter conversion. So in your grade book, you could actually just type in A or A minus or B. What this third field is then if you type in A, it's going to give them a 97. It takes the average between 94 and the next highest, 100, 97. You could just type in the letter. But then, of course, if you wanted a 100, you type in A, it's not going to give a 100. You have to. So that's what that part of that feature is available for. Now, extra credit. Two things to be said for extra credit, 2 steps. As you're looking at doing this, you want to add yourself a category for extra credit. Oops, come back. First day, new tablet. Crete. Cretans. Give it a weight of 0% because if you give it a weight, it is factored into the 100% of the total grade. And that's not how extra credit works. Create this extra credit. This one doesn't matter because out of weight, it's not worth anything. In fact, we're only going to use this category to track items that are extra credit. Because there's 2 ways to look at extra credit in the system. One is to try and add it on items. I can add it on an individual item. So I can say, all right, you got instead of getting a 97, you're getting a 101 on this assignment because you got 4 points of extra credit. It will read that 101 out of 100 and give extra credit. The difficulty that I find with doing that is a lot of people want to get fancy with their extra credit. And they say, well, I want the 3 total points on their grade. Only mean they get 3 total points on their overall grade if they get 5 extra credit points on this assignment. I'm like, don't do that to yourself. Just give them the 3 extra points on their final grade or something like that. So this is where my preferred method of looking at extra credit is have an assignment, have a quiz, have something that's measuring whether or not the students are getting that extra credit. So an example I was just working with today. Students have to read this track of information as their basis. But if students want to read like a higher level, almost a graduate level set of extra credit. And so this instructor built a set of assignments in this extra credit category for students to submit saying, here's my summary of this graduate level reading that I just did. And then he would assess, okay, did or didn't do it appropriately. You just did 1 or 0. And that would be for him tracking that they did that. If they did them all, they got 5 extra points on their total course grade. If they did 3 out of 5, 3 points, 1 point. He was relating each assignment to an extra credit point.
So when you go to the grade book and you have a column of extra credit, what are you going to put in there?
Well, and that's where you have 2 things to look at here. He was doing those assignments, and so he had the students physically submitting something. And so as they submitted to the assignment, that was what was in the grade book. And he was tracking that to say did or didn't do. 1 or 0, 1 or 0, 1 or 0.
Is it a graded, would it be considered a graded assignment then?
Well, let me put one in here as an example for the sake of an assignment, right? So we know in assignments, I'm going to have a student give me something. Give me a keyboard. Student's going to give me something. Instructions. Due date, whatever. I'm going to throw this in the extra credit category, which is weighted at 0%. And in this context, I'm recreating the context from my instructor this morning. He wanted it to be pass, fail. 1 or 0. Oh, come on. 1 or 0. So the item itself is only worth 1 point, but it's in a category worth nothing. Create. Switch over my category to extra credit. And you'll see this is that column now that he would use to track whether someone submitted. When they submit, he goes, he reads the summary, he puts, oh, can't do it for the moment. He puts 1 or he puts 0. When he's done at the end of the semester, he'll have 5 of them here. And you can see Did do, didn't do, did do, didn't do, did do. You know, yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. At that point, he's going to, and this is where the features play together. This is the feature that I'm offering to bring the extra credit into play. On the gradebook setup page, about 3/4 of the way down, there's called add grading columns to gradebook. The one in question is a course override column. By default, everything is calculated. All the grades are calculated. If I need to put any sort of extra credit or extra grade situation, and I put this course override column, so that when I come into the gradebook, now instead of just having calculated percent right here in the middle, an A right now, it gives me an area for overall that I can type in. Here's my recommendation for this is all these pieces, moving parts coming together. Let's say he has all 5 here. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. That's gonna, at the end of the semester, these NAs in line here were gonna be 95s, 98s, 80s, 70s. I mean, our students will be all over the place. If that student got the 5 extra credit points, you're gonna take that 93, go to the overall area and type in a 98.
So you're manually, for extra credit.
You're adding those 5 points manually at the end. Correct. That I find for most, and say, I want to do extra credit and I'm doing this, that, and the other thing. This is what they're trying to do. But they come to me and say, I want to do extra credit. I want to do. I'm like, if you start adding extra points on top of an assignment value, instead of actually adding 5 points to their course grade, which is what this does, a lot of professors come to me and say, I want to let them get more points on a 100-point assignment. That's good, but that's only actually giving them value within a category worth 25% of their grade. Those 5 extra points on top of 100 don't equal 5 extra points on their total course grade.
So what is the difficulty of,
The weight is not the same.
so if you have an assignment that's 100 points, you can't manually override and put 103.
You can.
But that would be only over that.
It'll be
that
only a
assignment.
part of that, whatever's in that category. So if that's 25% of their grade, at some point, up to the points in that category, well, it depends on if you're using total points or percents. Using percents, I'm frankly not sure what the calculations are going to do, but it's going to continue adding to their percentage of 25% of the grade, right? I have a category, 25%. If there's extra credit in there, it's only ever going to add to that 25. Using total points, I could see it going above and beyond and starting to inflate the category.
I hear you talking about 2 things. I think I hear you saying that you could add points to an assignment as credit, and there's one way to do that. But then there's also if you want to add points, extra credit for the overall grade. That's a different process.
The process I just showed you is how you would add it to the overall grade. Definitely. But I could see you could use this same method to be something on top of an assignment, to have it be an assignment that's graded. You can always give a 105 out of 100. If your goal is to give them a 95 instead of a 93 at the end of the semester, that won't accomplish it unless you do the math to know how much each of those points above 100 is worth in the category to inflate the overall grade.
You can also do these within an assignment, a final exam or multiple essay questions on which students will receive extra credit.
Right.
When you're filling in that manual grade, you can give them 9 instead of perfect 7 or whatever.
Per question, quiz or on things like that. Correct.
And then that way, Kurt, they know exactly why they're getting extra credit because you've got the spot and then you have an opportunity to put in there a comment saying, student, you did great, you added this, that was above and beyond.
That's really helpful consideration for looking at giving extra credit on specific points is through a quiz or through those smaller assignments. I'm not a mathematician, so trying to speak to the features is hard, but while keeping the math in mind.
I think maybe we're a little bit confused because our previous system, which will remain unnamed, would not allow that kind of thing to happen
Right.
without hoops or something.
Gymnastics is what I like to call it.
So we're operating under the assumption that we can do that. But oops, we
Yes. And again, I take the time, I want to flesh it out and show things and talk through the scenarios in the course, supplemental site basics, gradebook, extra credit. Schoology produced an entire article on extra credit here, and they detail both how to do this that I'm suggesting. I prefer and I suggest this on the entire course grade level of extra credit, but I know that doesn't meet every need. So then there's options here about how to go about adding it to over an assignment and things like that in this article that they're showing. And then it does the math here. Extra credit and percentage-based grading categories. Extra credit and total paste. So if you're really interested and my answer is insufficient, you can check out this article. What I'll do, Kurt, is I'll actually go read that article and I'll record it into YouTube. Send it to you in 2-minute bites over 3 weeks. That's how a millennial learns, right? 2-minute bites. Whew. Your questions are driving this, but we're looking at time here. That's an interesting consideration. Time. 2 things to highlight then for the last point of gradebook. In the fourth of 4 quarters here of the page, you have hide information from student reports. Principle behind the gradebook in Schoology. It grades everything that it sees. If there is a null value, as in nothing is submitted in a cell, it ignores it. So at the end of your semester, if your students have not submitted things and you need to have that mark against them, you have to put 0s or 50s or whatever you call a failing grade. At some point, you have to put that in there, or else it'll just ignore it and it's evaluating them based on what they've submitted. And they may have submitted tons of hundreds of things, doing really well with little things, but the final exam didn't get submitted. It'll still show them as 100 because it's not calculating that cell until you put the 0 in it.
Unless you flag it as missing or incomplete in the gradebook.
There are flags in the gradebook that communicate to the students. Incomplete, missing, excused is an option, and each of them have their own
It's most
values.
useful in process of a course. Students hand in a paper and 1 or 2 forgot, flag them as missing. They'll be quick to come to you and say, "Why did I get a 0 on this?"
Right.
It automatically marks it as it would be if it was never turned in. It's a 0. And so all of a sudden they see their grade get docked.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday I had a 93, now I've got an 83. What in the world? And they'll come up for you to say, "Yeah, turn it in."
You flag it automatically gets to 0.
Yes.
You don't have to put a grade in it. You have to put a 0 in.
No.
Depending on which flag you
It gives you
use.
a symbol
Oh, okay.
for missing or incomplete.
Bring the
To the
microphone.
student, it does the math as if you put a 0 in. To you, it's a pretty clear indicator that I didn't actually put the 0 in. This isn't final. There's just a flag that gets the student in gear, and they will often react pretty soon.
They get a notification.
Yeah.
What notification do they get? They just a change in the grade book.
Yeah, and well, so I'll show it in just a second where they are so you can see what the flags are, and then you can even play with them yourselves. Don't do it to a live student. They won't like that. They get a notification in their status notification and an email saying you've received a grade in your course. And they go to check what that is, it shows it visually, and I'll show them in just a second here. The point of this one being, because a gradebook is not truly accurate until the end of the semester, I recommend using hide overall grades for at least the first few weeks or for a time period. Because the first student gets in there and gets like 100 on 100 on a quiz, they've got 100 in the course. And that's really inflating their opinion of their grades. They go in and they bomb that first one, they fail it, that can really deflate them. I recommend this, turn it on for the first few weeks and then turn it off. Let them see it after a few weeks of grades have started accumulating, because then it's a little bit more of an accurate representation of where they currently are. One of the courses I taught, I had the chance to use this. I actually turned it off because the students, when I turned it back on, started asking useless questions again. You know, well, wait, a B? Well, why do I have a B? Because you failed the last assignment. But that's okay because that assignment means nothing for the entire course. Like, calm down. I turned it off and left it off until midterm. Turned it on, told them check your grades, have meetings with me, connect with me if you are concerned for your grade. 2 of them did. It worked. The rest of them were okay with their grades and we moved on. And then through the end of the semester, they were able to see that accurate representation after midterm. Just suggestions.
So if you turn them off, they'll be able to see their
Individual grades, just not whether they're at an A, B, or C in the course currently. This just hides overall grade. They see that they got a 9 out of 10, a 15 out of 30, but They don't see that ABC. Last thing, so you all asked about, I'll show this briefly. In any gradebook, and we'll see how this works with the touch screen. Any gradebook, any cell, if you hover over it, usually it gives you options. So I'm going to see if I can't tap here. There we go. That's the best representation I'm going to get. On the right-hand side, you have a bubble that lets you put a comment on a big picture comment. You have a small little text box area, so the point is don't put paragraphs in there. It's the, good job. Honestly, it's a place for you to say, like, this did well, or you did not do well. Please see my comments on the assignment itself. You can put those grading comments later. The flag on the left-hand side are the exceptions we're discussing. When you click that flag, it gives you the option to use excused, incomplete, or missing. And sorry, Gene, you are my target today. If I hit excused, it puts a little green check mark on it, green little block, and it's a null value. That dash is null value. So it has not impacted his grade. So you still got the 98. If I switch it over to incomplete, again, it's not impacting his grade. It's just got the dash through it and the new icon. Lastly is missing, and it gives a 0. And because I have a grade override, it doesn't matter. But that's less the point. As you start building these into your gradebook, if you had 15 students and 100 assignments in here, and you see green dot, orange dot, half dot, you'll see them visually through your gradebook, and you can go back and track them down. Another helpful point is this view filter, the top here. Using the view filter, you can track those. So you can even say, show me anything marked missing with that flag with a submission since I marked it that way. Very helpful for tracking people down who've submitted late. Yeah, Kurt.
So if you have a due date and you mark missing, you're going to have to go back and change the due date for them to be able to submit it again, correct?
Due dates don't impact whether they can or can't. Due date is a soft flag to track when. Just when. So if they submit after the due date, it marks them late. If you want to lock them out, there's a feature called lock.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, quizzes, it's called attempts, how many attempts they get. Yeah, an assignment or discussion is called lock, and it's represented by a lock icon. You can actually lock assignments and discussions so they can't submit after a certain time. But that's not, we don't highlight that feature because not many people really want it. And even when they want it, they end up turning it off because it gets too much in the way anyways. There's time to use it, but that's why we don't emphasize it. Yeah.
Before we do Gradebook, could we just go back into one of the categories like reading articles or reading submissions and add an assignment? Just let me see.
See those steps?
Yeah.
That's actually the next thing to do. So it's perfect. You guys are on top of it. Your needs are my agenda. This never happens. This never happens.
Can you set up
I'm on recording, so I don't know. Two ways to design materials. Traditionally, and those who've been here at least through one or more courses probably do a lot of their adding from this home page. You're looking at it as a student, so you don't see the Add Materials button here. But that's, as a teacher, that's right there, Add Materials. And that's, like I said before, they're the flesh of a course. If you're in the gradebook, there's also a plus icon on the far right-hand side, which would let you add an assignment, test, quiz, or discussion. So if you either context, the gradebook or the home page, either go for the plus sign or the Add Materials drop-down. Those are two places for adding content. Taking a quick look at these. So those with experience, a little bit of redundancy here, but I'm going to highlight the advanced features for your sake. For those with more, you're going to see at least these first steps. Add, or with less information. Add assignment, click on that. It brings up this pop box to walk me through the content that I'm going to need. Assignments are one-way streets. If I want student to give me something, I use an assignment. Discussions are two-way streets. So I like to say that because if I want to put out something for the students to interact or for me to interact with the students, a discussion is my tool. Give me something, it's an assignment. And assignments support audio files, video files, PowerPoint, Word document, projects, anything you can have them digitally submit, it can go in there. If you want to grade it or put a due date on it or other things, yeah, you can. And one of the advanced features to speak to here Down at the bottom, you have options and then a series of icons here. If you hover over them, they give you information. I can't hover with this mouse because it's touchscreen. You hover over them, it gives them information. Pointing out, like we just referenced, there's a lock. That's how I could lock the assignment down if I wanted students to not be able to submit. The green icon is visibility. If it's green, a student sees it. If I hit it, it is now unpublished. That's language and students can't see it. So the advanced features here to watch for use at those who have been using these contents areas for a while may already know this. The box with the little green arrow, oops, come here, is about whether or not a student can make a submission. And so for something that happens in class, we encourage you to turn that box off so that this is, you even type in here, this is a place for your grade. You turn that off and the students cannot submit. It doesn't give them late reminders. That's a really big point because the students get really frustrated. I have 62, ungraded things, but it's just because you're not having me submit anything to you, blah, blah, blah. So if you turn that off, they don't get reminders that it's late, which is very helpful for their sake.
So when you just turned it on, I thought you meant turned it off.
It is off. I'm going to hit it. It is on. So by default, it's on. By default, it's on for students to submit to you.
Students will say, if you don't check that box, what is it that you want me to submit on this? Well, you've already had it. It's going to be an in-class assignment. So they're used to submitting there. They're used to knowing.
And that's why it's the default.
Yeah.
If you have a reason not to grade, not to have them submit something to you, which happens, you just turn it off. And that way, the communication with them is you do not have to submit. It helps it be very clear for them that way. Besides that, the leftmost option is the 3 vertical dots there. I like to say it's the trinity of Schoology. That lets you do individually assigning.
The other time you'll use that is if you have them doing something that they don't have to upload. Like they're doing some reading or doing just that they can check that they've done it.
Right.
Not that they're uploading something too. Yeah, that's the other thing that I forget.
I've used it for presentations. The student gives a presentation. I can have a rubric on this assignment.
Yeah.
I pull up the rubric and this is touchscreen. I can literally touch the rubric as they're speaking and give them grades. I did that with my course this past spring where they walked out of the room with their presentation grade. I built my rubric extensively enough that I trusted it. I had some areas I could add comments on very specific things. But they walked out knowing their grade and students love that. I mean, that's fantastic.
When you do it as an assignment, even if it's disabled and you've got a due date attached to it, it pops up and we've been finding for fully online courses or for on campus, the students rely on this upcoming assignments feed they get. And so even if you just want to remind them of something, just disable submissions and put an assignment because they live, it's funny, they won't even click in your folder sometimes. They'll just live off that upcoming, which is problematic too, but that's a really good way if you really want them to see it. Put a due date on it and they'll see it.
I recommend first-time instructors in Schoology. I mean, if you feel confident and you're jumping in on this and you love it, run with the wind. However, I recommend first-time instructors in Schoology A to use their grade book, set up the categories, and just put things in that are going to hold the grade place and use your calendar. The students will run with the calendar so well. They love it. They love it. They love it. And we've had a lot of feedback since we've instituted this program coming through exit interviews, students that have graduated, and they all of them said, thank you so much for doing Schoology, or why don't all of my professors use Schoology? Yeah.
We are actually running a pilot program.
Right.
So if we don't include the due date, give a little bit more flexibility for our
Sure.
population.
Sure. The other thing would be either don't include the due date and that's acceptable. You're going to work with the workflow with them to train them to go into the folders and use things. Or this is not a set in stone kind of thing. Come in and change the due date if you need to. If you're going to continue to negotiate that with them throughout the semester, throughout the week that they have, you can just come in here and change it at any point. Both and or, I'd say. Either don't use them or use them with it and just continue to move the dates. Because when they get into any of their other classes, they'll be expected to maintain those due dates. It'll depend. It will depend on what you're going to work with.
This is a question. I think when you got into this page where you don't want to read reports already and then move to assignments. Because I see the categories.
That's the point that I was going to come back around to. So I was just on the add materials page. I wasn't even in that category. Because I had defaulted that category earlier with the star, it's pre-selecting it.
So, but if you don't default, you would go to category, click category.
Correct. And if you don't default, this is the view you see. There's nothing there. And now, those who taught from before will notice, before it used to let you just move on, and it would default to ungraded. If I try and hit create with it empty, it stops me and makes me select a category. Right. Because it's a required field now. So I either have to select it to be ungraded or I can put it in something. Helpful either way.
I didn't know that when I was first. I was reading the course first and without categories, and I was creating more for myself.
You can set up a category.
You can. Right here, in that drop down, there's a create new categories option. And my page just flew all over the place. So I'm gonna wrap with two things, because I mean your questions have taken the extra time and I don't mind. If you don't mind, I don't mind taking the extra time. So far taken a lot of time with this section. I do want to wrap to be respectful of your time and to give Justin the floor. But please feel free to come and go as you need to. We booked our afternoons to support you guys. The final 2 points here are that we looked at an assignment and I emphasized some of the specifics using the no submissions button for those that have the background experience. We were answering some questions for those with no experience. Going to the discussion really quick or quickly as I reteach myself adverbs. The only thing that you have to watch for, first step, is to select your enable grading. If you don't do that, it is an ungraded item. But it's right there in front of you, enable grading. And then from there, you have all those things that we've mentioned before. It defaults to my reading reports because that's what I knew I was going to build a lot of. It defaults to my social work standard scale because that's the department I'm in, or I'm speaking through my hypothetical. The things to watch for. Again, we have our lock that can be helpful if you want to lock it down so students can't submit at any time. But the item of most importance is this little guy. If you're having discussions and it's not giving me the language, can I get the mouse? Come on, whatever. Flip it. This little guy is the difference between can students see each other's posts before they post. If I turn it, I don't remember which one it is now. I think it's with the color.
When it's lit up, they cannot see the other students' posts until they posted. They'll see that somebody has posted, but there's gray bars through the text. So they'll think, oh no, I better get in here, and it prevents plagiarism.
It also gives them that notice. It tells them you cannot see your fellow, your peers' posts until you post. So you don't have to write that in your instructions or anything. Are you in a discussion?
Can he, as a student?
Not in my course. If he was in his own course, maybe. Creating a discussion? Yep. It's just for discussions.
In our online courses, that's the default setting. We set it to that just to enhance, just to make sure there's original thought and things like that.
How many posts now start with, and so-and-so said above.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, we know that at that point you haven't written your own work before you read everybody else. Updates are intended to be extracurricular, so there's no originality check there. Yeah. Specifically because they're extracurricular. If it became a curricular feature, they would probably add that.
I use them curricularly because they're easier to access than a discussion when teaching from this.
Ah.
I'll ask students, I'll flip the classroom a little bit, I'll show them a video or a picture.
And then you get them in the updates page.
And then they're all grouped right there for me. We begin the class. Hello, everybody. We begin the class by going through the updates. And,
Yeah.
And verbally, either congratulating or chastising a student. Well, never chastising, right? But in love, telling them what they did really well and what they only did well. And how some of them can do better. That's a hard line. Okay?
Yep. Thank you, Tim. I love that. I do appreciate that. Oops. The last thing then, and this is most relevant for fresh people to the environment, but even for you guys coming in We're using this. Adding the file, link, or external tool. Ignore external tool, no problem there, but add file and link. If you want to upload a file for your students to get, that's going to be your steering wheel. Adding file will let you upload a Word document, a PDF, anything that's going to have instructions or information for your students. You get this pop-up when you select it. Two things to note. If I click file, it gives me the file area. If I click link, it gives me the link area. With file, it's fairly simple. Add a file or add files up to 512 megabytes. What I want to show is the link. I like this about link. This is the extra feature to note today. You can type in any of your links, and then this icon here next to my green donut, or what used to be a green donut, now it's just a green light. The ABC here is whether or not it displays in Schoology itself. I really like that feature. I like to have it display in Schoology because then the students' learning experience is right there in the environment. They're not encouraged to go out to some other website to continue their learning. If you send them out, you rarely get them back. So if you use that ABC and leave it on, because I think that's the default, it will display in Schoology, and then that experience is unique for them. What I like to use as the sample, white hooks. Oops. Here we go. It's the White House. Click on it. Please load. Great. There's the website right inside my Schoology. It's not a picture. It's not a video. This is the website, and I can navigate here within the website inside of Schoology. Very helpful to send them to the White House and then go, here's whitehouse.gov, go find legislation that's recently been published or posted about, or whatever your exploration is. You can drive them here. I'm in Schoology looking at the whitehouse.gov playing a video. So it's fairly robust that way for that kind of integration. Please note, not all websites will work because they don't have the right security settings. That's the website's fault, not Schoology's fault.
That's designed to be the default to display in Schoology.
It's designed to be the default. Yep.
If you do that and a website is just showing it blank, it's because the website isn't secure. So you'll have to uncheck that after that. YouTube's secure. Many of the educational ones are secure.
Yep.
By secure, HTTPS.
S. Bingo. If you're looking at any link that you want to use in Schoology, make sure it has HTTPS, as in Sam, at the end of that. That'll make sure that it works effectively and in Schoology. If it doesn't have the S, you just have to teach the students to click on it to go outside, but then that defeats the purpose of what we're trying to demonstrate. That is it for my session. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for the information on BASIC. I will gladly take, please do note, any of the resources referencing the materials that we're working on today are in this folder, so you can go back and review the article on it. That helps you get information and terminology to ask me questions. I'm here as your servant, frankly. I'll put it that way. That's been my job change since July 1. For those that have known me before July 1, I am here exclusively for the faculty to support with eCampus and instructional technology. Any question you have, want me to come to your classroom, want me to help you learn some aspect of tech or eCampus, feel free to connect with me that way. If anyone, now Justin, you can navigate based on how much time you have or need, but does anybody need a break? Specifically, you guys have been coming and going. No, that's free, no problem there, but otherwise Justin can jump right into it.
Sure, and I can even squish mine a bit too. So some of what I want to offer, we'll give us some of the essential building blocks. I want to offer some tips and tricks, extras to really enhance what we do. Just a moment here. I'm looking at an upside down screen in case you're, oh, that's wonderful. So, and you can access these, I'm not gonna do that. You can access these in the tips and tricks folder. And some of these are more low hanging fruit, others are a bit more involved. The first one's probably the most complex, but to be honest, it's also the one that I've had the most excitement about with professors I've been meeting with. It's been one of my personal favorites lately. And so it's something we've been doing in our both fully online courses and something I've been doing even for my own supplemental sites and that others have been using. And that is embedding Google Docs within different items of Schoology. If you're not familiar with Google's version of Word, the key difference being it lives on the cloud, it auto saves, which is really nice, and it's super collaborative. So if Tim logs into a Google Doc while I'm in there, he can be at home, I can be here, we can both be typing and live. We see the other person typing. We did a workshop earlier this year where I had people on campus doing something, they were typing, they were talking, and we had 5 or 6 people online, and we were all, it was like we were all in the same room. It was really wonderful. So there are some great options. The 2 I'm going to highlight for you, and there are so many ways you could use them, will be for class signups and also to enhance discussions. You can enhance many things with this. The beauty of Schoology is face value. It looks like things are more locked down than some other systems. Oh, I only get discussions, I only get assignments, but they're extremely flexible and they integrate with all sorts of other tools. That's what really makes Schoology far more of a forward-thinking platform than other LMSs that are out there. So let's check out embedding Google Docs. Now, since this is the most complex deal out of all these, I made a how-to video. It's going to do everything I showed you, just so you can go back and reference it later. It's about 5 minutes. So if that's your attention span, there it is. There, it's right there for you. That's about mine. So, and so I first want to show you what this looks like, and then we'll talk about how to do it. So first, just for a class sign up. I love presentations. I get my students up and presenting often, and so I want a sign up. I could pass a piece of paper around. That's great. But I really liked this because students can log in, even do it on their phones. It's quick. And so as you can see here, this is just a Google Doc. And I just clicked in there. And apparently an anonymous squirrel is also there, but that's kind of how it shows up. That's all it is. And this is in a page in Schoology, which is just a blank kind of deal you can add items to. So that's a sign up. But the way I really like using these, we've had really great success with this, is to add them to another tool, such as a discussion. One of the things I always do in my classes is have ticket out the door or exit tickets, if you ever use these, and I use 3x5 cards often in class. Say before you leave, I'll maybe end about 5 minutes before class is done. I typically have some open-ended questions about my content, or I'll have a clearest, muddiest point, and that is, tell me one thing that is the clearest to you after our lesson today. And then what's one thing you don't quite understand yet? What was the muddiest point? And it's a great opportunity for formative assessment. I can see my students' thought in formation and speak into it. And the first thing I do next class is I speak to the questions they had. Here's a way to enhance that. So I have a discussion forum, okay? In the instructions, I have a Google Doc, and all it is clearest point, muddiest point. It's all I did, all I typed there. And below, the discussion thread would be there. The instructions I have here was after class, hey guys, as soon as we're done, first thing, just go jump into this discussion forum, or do it now in class if you have them bring in their own devices, which is not uncommon, and write down one item under each of these. Then, sometime before next class, you need to review everyone else's clearest points they posted, and then pick somebody else's muddiest point and try to answer it in the discussion thread below. That way, you get the students to start to own some of their part in the learning community in your class, and then they start to work towards solving their own problems. They're taking, again, responsibility for being a good citizen of your class. And then, of course, the next class, you can say, hey, guys, well done at answering Jared's questions. Let me clarify this point for you. It is just an excellent opportunity for formative assessment and building community. So let's talk about how to do that briefly. To create a Google Doc, you're going to go to drive.google.com. I'm going to have a problem here because I'm using this as a tablet. And if you don't have a Google account, it's really easy to create one. If you do have Gmail, this is you'll be set up. You'll have your own. Pardon me here. I'm just going to leave. I'm going to switch this around. And I can't. New technology. So wonderful. So what you're going to do, here we go, is create new. New, and gives you some options. We're going to go with Google Docs. You can do Sheets, whatever you want. And it's really quite user-friendly. You can click it from the title here to change the title, and my video walks you through all of this. There we go. So we have our Google Doc. That's sitting there. You can type whatever it is you need there. For signups, I often build kind of a table. Now I want to go back to my site. And what you have to do is you have to have an item to embed this in, to stick it in kind of this window that's displaying within my instructions. This is, again, it's going to sound really complex, okay? And I promise you, I'm not a techie person by nature. I rely on Will for a lot of this stuff. So it's going to look a little scary, okay? But I've put a video in here for you, okay? So I need what's called an embed code, a frame, a window frame to put this in. This scary looking line is that, at least to me, it's kind of scary. You see all these little things, what does this mean, you know? That's what I have to put in here, okay? And so I'm not gonna go through it just for time. My video walks you through every step, but basically what you're going to do is copy that, just, you know, select it and right click copy.
That one that's up there right now.
Yes, this one. Sorry, I left it here. And again, I walk through step by step in this video. I'm just thinking time-wise, we can kind of skip over this because I have a video. But then in your discussion, you need to put that funny-looking link. And one key distinction I'm going to make for you as you do that, normally when I edit a discussion and I put links or something in there, here we go to edit, right? I have my options. Normally we just write it here in this area, in my rich text editor. When you have a link like this, it's called an HTML code. You have to go into the HTML mode, which is intimidating, okay? You're going to go over here to the upper right-hand corner. There's two circles that says switch to HTML. Looks a bit scarier. But in there, you're going to paste that link. And once you do that, if I go in here and scroll down, that's my link. Okay, it says iframe. That's kind of the key word there. Once I do that, I can switch back, save my changes, of course, because we always hit save changes if we see the button. And that's where it's going to embed. And the only difference is, so I gave you the iframe. It has a different link there. What you're going to have to do is go back to your Google Doc. Once you have your iframe there, you've pasted it. And you have to grab the correct link because Google Docs can be used in different ways. All right, so you're going to click share. My video walks you through this. Get shareable link. Right now, anyone, when I post this link, anyone who sees it can only view it. They won't be able to edit it, and that's not what we want. So I'm going to drop that down and choose can edit. And now they have that link. I'll copy it. In the video, it shows you where to put that link inside the HTML code. That's how that works. And the video walks you through it. It looks scary, but once you get the hang of it, I've got a lot of professors who are starting to use it and loving it. Especially in the discussion forum, it has just really enhanced a lot of discussion, enhanced the idea that, hey guys, learning happens all over the place, not just in the classroom, and encouraging that kind of a mindset.
For your comfort's sake, you know, seeing some of the processes in play, but just in giving you this kind of resource, it's just copy and paste. As long as you copy and paste in the right place, you're good. So you don't have to write the code, you don't have to understand the code, just get the right links, paste in the right places, and you're good to go. And this is going to be, ladies, for your sakes, when you get your accounts and you're eventually gentlemen already in this course that are with us, you can go and just get this resource and come back to it anytime you want to. You don't have to save it on your computer. We'll have you in this course. This resource will be available to you henceforth.
I'll be honest. I have no idea how that frame is built. I found it on the internet by Googling it, and I copied it and pasted it here for you. And I keep going back to it, and I use it, and I copy that same one. So it wasn't my own technological genius that did this. I found somebody else who did it, okay? And it's just copy and paste. I can do that. It's my speed. Okay, so that's the most complex. We'll move on to something a bit easier. I know, no, that one is a lot. The next is a group project collaboration space. I love group projects. I know students always complain, but we have decades of literature to show that this is a very meaningful thing for them. And guess what? Literally almost everything in life is done in a group. Your family, where you go to work. And so I know it's kind of scary. And I even do this in fully online classes where people are separated by distance. But to be honest, I really find it helpful in my face-to-face classes because, as you know, if you've been teaching here for a while, you'll probably have at least a few students who are commuters. And to have them get together to plan can be tricky. There's a lot that would go into effective design of an actual group I'm not going to touch on, but this is just, here's a space for them to collaborate. In my supplemental sites always have a folder if I'm going to do a group project that provides a couple of things for them. I'm only going to talk about the first one. These here are just checkpoints. Whenever I do a larger project, this is a large group project, this one is. We're actually writing a metaphor as a group, so it's an open-ended really kind of a complex higher order project. So I want multiple checkpoints for me to step in and hit the brakes if need be or steer them somewhere else. So I've got multiple checkpoints. All of those things in my course that pertain to the group project, I keep in that folder. So they know where to go. It's always, that's where you're gonna go in the supplemental side. So I've got a section for peer review they do at the end of the course. I've got a couple checkpoints. What I'm gonna focus on is their actual collaboration. That's just a discussion forum, all right? And what I've done here for this discussion is that, I didn't set it up yet, I'm gonna do that. I want a discussion that only that group can see, right? I don't need the other group. I don't need group B to see group A's work. It's probably not as very desirable. So I'll briefly cover here with you how to assign a group to a select number of students, which is a really outstanding feature. So the first thing I want to do is to create those groups. And to do that, you go to Members on the left-hand menu. You may not be able to see as a student, I'm not sure, you probably can't. And so you'll notice in the right-hand corner, I have a section to organize members into a grading group. Pretty easy, right? So let's add a grading group. And lucky you, I will add everyone here in, and let's call it Group A or Group A. We're done. It's created. We have a group. Once we've created that group, we can align any assignment, any discussion to that group, and only those members can see it. You as the administrator, as the teacher of that course, will be able to see all of them, but the student can't. And that's what's really nice. You can even use this feature to break down discussions. Say if you have like 20 or more students in a class, discussion forums by the time you get like halfway through the week, it's like, okay, everyone's just repeating each other, even if they don't see if they don't see each other's posts. So breaking a class in half and doing that can be really helpful to get a bit more meaningful discussion for everyone. That's just a free tip. But so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make sure Group A alone can see this discussion. So I'm going to edit my discussion. And then towards the bottom, we'll point it out. We've got these 3 dots. If I hover over it, it's going to say individually assign. You could actually assign this just to one student if you wanted to. And when it says assign to, I'm going to type in Group A, or I'm not. There we go. All right, now only Group A can see this. And once I save changes, key distinction, yes. And I'm going to save changes. Normally what I do as well, and this is just a best practice because students don't know who's in their group. That was done in the back end. So where it says group members at the top here, I type in their names so they know. Because there's inevitably that one student who's a little late to the game or never shows up. And that's, you can address that with your grading structure and for participation for these sorts of things. A couple of things I've done here. I have all the instructions for my group project. Since this is larger, I have actual separate roles that I have them assign according to how they're talented, what they want to contribute to the project. And this discussion thread is just for them. I also tell them, this is one of the main places I'm going to go to see that you've been pulling your weight in this project. Accountability is a massive piece for a successful group project, as you know. So I need to see that you're sharing your files here. I need to see you're talking, you're contributing. It's an excellent tool because in these discussion forums, you can see how many posts someone has made, how often they're in, things like that. The one piece of feedback I've been getting, though, particularly on campus, is we want to meet at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Do so remotely. These discussion threads are designed for asynchronous learning. That means you post and you'd have to refresh the page to see somebody else's post, which is, it's not going to work. they want to call live chat. So I have a link in here. It says live chat. If you notice this kind of in the middle of the page, it actually uses one of the tools I'm about to show you. But I've got a space for them to jump in and live. They have a chat, or they can video as well if they'd like to. And I had pretty good feedback with students using that. So any questions on that? That's kind of just providing a digital space for them to collaborate, even though we meet face-to-face. Because these students, even if they're all on campus, one of them might be on the soccer team and traveling this weekend. And there's all sorts of pieces that go into that. So to ensure the success of a good group project, you can give them a lot of time, typically, and also provide these extra spaces. All right. Just make sure I'm not missing anything. So next I want to talk about the tools we have, one of which for live chat that we could use for digital office hours. This is one thing we've often used for fully online courses because the contact with the professor is often a really difficult thing to establish. And Will and I did some research over the summer. There's about a decade and a half of research on instructor presence and what that matters for a fully online course. And there's a massive consensus across the literature that how present an instructor is in an online course is the most important factor, hands down, to student success and retention within a program. And so things like digital office hours provide that touch point. As a side note, as Christian educators, I think being in community must be a hallmark of the way we educate. And so being present is really important. For supplemental sites, we see our students, right? However, if you've taken that blended option, the Monday 1 hour, Wednesday 1 hour, and Friday online, this is excellent to set up, hey guys, we're gonna talk at this time, okay? And I'm gonna go deeper about something, or I'm just gonna be available. I'm gonna be sitting on my couch watching TV with my wife, and you can jump in and chat and ask me any questions you'd like. It's another layer of I'm not gonna lie, I've sat on the couch with my wife and chatted with students. So not with video, I just had a little chat room. So we have two great options for you, two different options. The one has been installed site-wide for everyone. On the left-hand menu, you can see at the very bottom, big blue button, Conference. This is your choice really for those sessions you want to be more instructive, okay? And, oops, I just went somewhere else. And so big blue button is a place where you can actually upload whole PowerPoint presentations and have a whiteboard and draw as you're teaching your students. So that's more of the setup for this one. You're gonna hit create new conference. You can give it a name. Start your conference, and you can set a date on this and a time that they know when to go in. What is pretty neat is that students can set these little icons and they can raise their hands. Thank you. And you can choose as well to say, I'm confused as a student. They can kind of post these things. And so we do have further training available on how to use this, but if you want to do more instruction and kind of have that, because we're going to meet together and we're going to talk about this sort of concept. I know some of our language teachers in the grad school use this because they can actually draw and things like that. So really handy feature. You can upload documents, PowerPoints, you name it. So Big Blue is that more instructive option. If you're just looking more to chat or just to be available to students, so digital office hours in the sense of stop by my office, I'll be just working and doing whatever. We have an even simpler option. And this is the option I provided to my students for their live chat. And that tool is called Appear In. It's a web-based, completely free chat. It is very painless to use, okay? So I provided a link for you. All you have to do to create an Appear In room, you don't even have to have an account. You can go up to your address bar here and type appear.in, put a slash, and I'm gonna say Real Illingworth. You can type in whatever. As long as it's not taken, I'm just gonna hit enter. We have our own room. It just creates it. That's all you have to do to set up one of these spaces. And there I am. Hello. And we'll disable the thing. Normally when I'm at home, I just disable that, and in my audio as well if I'm just gonna chat. But you have the option of doing video. You can chat here. What's really handy is you can also share your screen. The student says, hey, I'm really having trouble finding this on the website. Where do I go? Share your screen and go there and show them. It's very easy. this is a great place for them to collaborate live as well. So appear.in, and that's the one I've often used for my digital office hours. It's worked really well. It works on mobile devices as well, pretty well. Okay, just a couple more things very quickly here. One thing I love using both for fully online classes and particularly for supplemental is a dedicated discussion forum for prayer requests. Again, one of the things we want to see, and one of the reasons, to be honest, I think one of the several reasons I think LBC is doing so well right now is that our students feel like they're part of a community here. And so anything we can do, I really think using this digital space, which is not a substitute for a face-to-face, it can certainly enhance and build that community. And so having a dedicated place, and obviously in class, we're going to share prayer requests. I know I always start class with prayer. This is one of those things we can have an ongoing place to share what's going on, and then we can follow up with each other when we meet face-to-face again. So it's super simple, but just to have that, it's a small touch, and it's also going to have your students, hopefully, if you can build a culture by you modeling it, by you being in there, posting yourself as well. It often kind of depends on the involvement of the instructor. I will say that. If you just leave it be, they often don't use it. But if you're there and they know you're reading it and maybe commenting on what they've had, then they're going to think, hey, this instructor really cares about my well-being and where I'm at and what I'm going through. It's been a really helpful tool. So that's just kind of an easy one there. Just two more very quick things here. One of my favorite items in Schoology is the media album. It's one we don't often train on, but if you're a creative type person, it is an outstanding tool. And it can be used across all sorts of disciplines. So I'm going to add materials. A third way you can actually add materials, you notice there's a green line that's kind of highlighted. I can add things right there as well. Beautiful thing about Schoology, there's always 3 or 4 different ways you can do the same thing. So a media album is simply a place for you to put videos, pictures, or audio. Okay? You can set it up to where you create all the media and students can't add. They can just comment on them, or they can add things. Give you a couple brief examples. I could assign a paper on a short reflection paper. Let's say I want to see if they've got this concept, and that would probably give me a pretty decent, understanding of whether they're actually meeting my learning goals, right? But a pretty robust way to assess that as well is to send them out and say, go find something. Go find a video that actually illustrates this. So if you're talking about music, you go find a video, that illustrates this. I'm going to get a pretty quick understanding whether that student's actually met my learning goals or not. In a paper, perhaps they could regurgitate what my textbook said, but if you put the onus on the student to go out and find it out in the world, you're going to get a much more robust assessment of whether they've actually met your learning goals, okay, rather than regurgitating your own words back to you or the textbook back to you. So that's why I really love media albums. You can, in media albums on the smartphone, on the app, are super easy to use. You can tell your students, you have a week to do this, but we have this concept we've been talking about. Whether you're at church, whether you're at home, whether you're out at the mall, if people even go to those anymore, I don't know. Take a picture of their phone where you see this concept out in the world around you. Again, it's going to continue to push this idea of that learning happens everywhere, not just when I'm talking at you. And understand that, learning is a process that I'm involved in, and it's hard work, and it doesn't just take place when I take tests and things like that. A great way to use it. And you can also provide your own examples as well. So that's pretty simple. You're just going to add a title there and a description. The keys here would be, so you can publish like Will showed us. Comments, they can add comments and say, hey, great job. And one way I've done this is to not let them add, and I'll create a whole album. Find 2 of these that are good examples of X concept. And I have maybe good examples and bad examples in there, and they have to find which one's which. One example. There's so many ways you could use that. So comments enabled or disabled. I almost always keep them enabled. This one's important. Same icon as a discussion forum where students can see or not see each other's posts. Slightly different meaning. This is instructors and students can add media, or only instructors can add media. Very important for how you want to use this. So there you go. And some of those, they can be pretty informal too. I had one that just ran the length of a semester and said, hey guys, as you see this concept we're talking about, I teach a class on Christianity in America. And so as you see these things out in the wild, as you see billboards, as you see signs in your church, as you see wherever, take a picture and give us a brief synopsis, and they can provide a caption for each picture. And it was really fascinating because at the end, after students have all added, you get this really interesting mosaic of what they all understand together. And they can appreciate what other people in the community are adding to the class's understanding. So I love that. So that's media albums. Last thing, and I think one of the most important things that you can do with your supplemental site is course updates. Left-hand menu. Course updates are used for a number of things. You can use them anywhere for course announcements. Hey guys, I forgot to give you this handout in class today. Here you go. Don't forget to study for the exam. Or like Tim has said, he's used them, and I've used them as well this way, actually assign students to go find these things. I mentioned I teach a class on Christianity in America. Each week, students had to go find current events. And I really wanted to build a community and understand you guys are bringing something to the table here, okay? This particular course I was teaching was for adult learners. So they've got a lot of life experience, and I want them to be able to draw on that. And so they had to post in this updates feature, updates area. And you can actually set it so they can't add, but to add for prayer requests as well. So you have the same rich text editor that you do in assignments and discussions. So we'll give them a little announcement there. And you can add files. So you forgot to give them something in class. Oh, guys, here you go. Links, items from your own personal resources. Make an audio or video recording. I provide weekly update videos on my online courses, and for supplemental sites, it's perfectly acceptable as well, just to take your phone out real quick. Hey, guys, I want to talk about this. Great job doing this. Let's focus on this next week. Excellent piece there. You can have polls like we've added here. You can participate in if you'd like. And so we have a few options there. What is important as well, before you hit post, there's a drop-down list. And sure, you can attach it to Twitter or Facebook if your students are actually using it. And I'm not sure we've really seen much use of that. But that little bell icon is very important. If I do not select that bell icon, this update is just going to live kind of in this column here, okay? It will also display on the student's homepage as soon as they log in, okay? But we all know you have to be really redundant to get students to get an announcement, right? Like that just might not be enough. So I'm all about giving a lot of different reminders to shout it from the rooftops. You need to study, or you need this. This bell does all of the things I mentioned before, and it also tags it to the top of the homepage. If you notice it's there now, and if I go to our main materials page, it's there as well. So it's in their face. There's no excuses. And then you can obviously remove that as well.
Justin, I've used updates for sign-ups as well. Your Google Docs is event right here.
But signups will work wonderful as well. You can even create a poll and do signups, although those are anonymous. That probably wouldn't look too well, would it? Now that I think about it.
You can go back and you can edit it. So students were signing up, and I'd say, okay, we'll close that date down. I can go back and edit it.
Yeah, so another suggestion is to use those updates for signups as well. Outstanding, yeah. The updates are extremely versatile. You can use them all for all sorts of things. Require students to post things there. Again, having them post prayer requests there is also excellent. Some of my most exciting experiences in online courses, just fully online, and to an extent really the supplemental ones as well, are when students start to view their contributions to the class as meaningful, and they really start to dig in deep and start to own some of this. And I have students post me updates, hey, I found this video, it's hilarious. And I was teaching a cultural geography course, and it was British humor. It was a good example of it. It's just a goofy clip. But it was dead on onto the concepts we had covered in class. And so to see them saying, hey, I found this as I was just browsing YouTube for who knows how long, and I found this and I posted it. I thought you guys would like it too. And it was dead on to the course concept. It was just a great example of tying what they're learning in your classroom out to the real world, if you consider YouTube the real world. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, like I said, Will and I are going to stick around as long as you need us to work in your individual problems or questions. And please consider us your resource moving forward as well. So,
Thank you so much.
yeah. Glad to be of help. Did you see that? Yeah. My screen as I was doing this was completely upside down. That's why I kept looking back here.